I never planned on noticing her that much. She was just the woman next door, the one who brought her groceries in at odd hours, sometimes humming softly, sometimes moving in silence like the house itself was listening. I first spoke to her at the small grocery store down the block. A Wednesday afternoon, nearly empty. I was standing by the coffee shelf, deciding between two brands I couldn't afford either way, when her cart slowed near me. "You always pick the same one," she said, not looking at me right away. It took me a second to realize she was talking to me. I blinked, glanced at her hand resting lightly on the cart handle. Slim fingers, faint flour dust at the nails. Yeah," I said. "Habit, I guess." She smiled faintly, eyes flicking up. "Habit makes things easier." That was all. She moved on, but I stood there longer than I needed to, pretending to read the labels. When I finally walked out, she was already loading bags into her car. I didn't wave. I just noticed she drove the same direction as me, turning into her driveway as I pulled into mine. That's when I realized she lived right next door. After that, small encounters piled up. Taking trash out at the same time. Picking up packages left at the wrong door. She always had this calm about her, like she knew what silence could do if you let it sit long enough. One evening I was on my porch with my phone in my hand, staring at a half-written message I wouldn't send. She stepped out into her yard, watering plants that didn't seem to need watering. She looked over, gave me a half-smile, then turned back to the hose. The air carried that faint smell of mint leaves crushed in water. We didn't talk, but I caught myself folding the edge of my napkin on the table over and over, as if my hands needed something to answer her presence. The first real conversation happened a week later. She knocked on my door, not loud, just enough to be heard. I opened it, confused, and there she was with a notebook in her hand. "Do you cook?" she asked, almost hesitant. I try not to burn things." That made her laugh, soft but unguarded. "Good enough. I was trying a recipe. It didn't come out right. I thought maybe." She stopped herself, eyes flicking away. "Never mind." "Forget I asked?" Something in her tone made me speak quicker than usual. "No, I can try. If you want." She nodded once, then pressed the notebook into my hands. I noticed her thumb lingered on the cover a second too long before she let go. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table flipping through her notes, half measurements, little scribbles in the margins. She didn't really need my help. I could see that. She just wanted something else. I was halfway through stirring a pan when my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. "You don't have to finish it tonight. But if you do, I'd like to taste it. Bring it over?" I stared at the screen longer than I should have, spoon still in my hand, the pan hissing faintly on the stove. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I couldn't stop imagining what would happen if I did. Her kitchen was warmer than mine, filled with the low hum of an old refrigerator, and the faint smell of cinnamon that seemed to have sunk into the walls. She moved with a kind of ease, not hurried, not self-conscious, as if the space had already accepted her presence a long time ago. I set the dish down on her counter, more nervous than I'd ever admit. She looked at it like she was considering not the food, but me. "You really tried," she said softly, spoon tapping the edge of the pan before she tasted it. Her eyes lingered thoughtful, then the corners of her mouth curved slightly. "Better than mine." I shrugged, pretending to focus on the empty mugs drying by the sink. "Beginner's luck." She leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms. For the first time, I noticed how tired she looked, like she'd been carrying something no one else saw. "You know," she said, after a pause that stretched long enough for the clock above us to tick twice. "I used to cook every night. For 3 people. Husband, daughter, me. It felt important back then." Her eyes flicked away before they landed on me again, and I wasn't sure if she regretted saying it. I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice yet. I didn't know what to do with that piece of her life, dropped between us like an object she'd forgotten to put away. I eat alone now, she added too quickly, as if smoothing the air. Sometimes it doesn't seem worth the effort. Something about the way she said it made me shift in my seat. I wanted to ask questions, about her husband, about her daughter, but the words stuck, crowded by the thought that I wasn't the one meant to ask them. Instead, I said, I usually eat out of a pan. Less dishes. She laughed, quiet but real. It wasn't the kind of laugh you gave strangers. For a moment, we stayed in silence, the kind that was almost comfortable. I noticed the way she wrapped her fingers around her own arm, like she was keeping herself in place. I imagined what it would feel like to ease that tension, and instantly hated myself for it. The truth pressed at the back of my mind: she was twice my age. She had lived a life before I'd even finished school. Whatever this was, this pull I felt, it wasn't supposed to matter to her. Still, when she set a cup of tea in front of me, her hand brushed mine. Lightly. Barely there. I froze, staring at the steam rising from the cup, pretending not to notice. But I did. And from the way her fingers lingered half a second too long, I knew she noticed too. Neither of us said anything about it. But when I left that night, she walked me to the door, leaned against the frame, and gave me a look I couldn't name. Not longing. Not permission. Something quieter. Thanks, she said, her voice softer than the air between us. For helping. I nodded, but the warmth of her hand against mine stayed long after I stepped back into the cool night. The next time I saw her was accidental. Or maybe not. I'd been coming home later than usual, a couple of shifts back to back, when I noticed her light still on. It was close to midnight, the glow spilling through her kitchen window. I don't know why I knocked. Maybe because I didn't want to go into my own silent apartment just yet. She opened the door in an oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a way I hadn't seen before. No practiced calm. Just her, tired and real. You're up late, I said, instantly regretting how obvious it sounded. She smiled faintly. So are you. She let me in without asking why I was there. Inside, the table was covered in open books, recipe notes, scattered like abandoned thoughts. A mug sat half-finished beside them, the tea gone cold. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Her shoulders lifted. Too quiet. I sat across from her. Neither of us said anything for a while. I watched her fingers trace the rim of the mug, round and round, like she was trying to keep time with something only she could hear. Then, softly, You remind me of someone. My brother's friend. He used to sit at our table like this. Always too young for the conversation, but always listening. She stopped. Looked at me, almost apologetic. I don't mean I get it. I cut in, though I didn't, not really. I just couldn't stand the space between her words. The air felt different then, heavier. I could hear the tick of the wall clock, louder with each second. I wanted to ask her what she really saw when she looked at me. But before I could, a knock. Her daughter. I'd seen her around on weekends, home from college. She stepped into the kitchen, headphones looped around her neck, and froze for a split second when she noticed me at the table. Oh, she said, not unfriendly, just curious. Didn't know you had company. Her mom's voice stayed even. Just a neighbor. He was helping me with something. I nodded quickly, stood too fast. Yeah, I was just leaving. Her daughter gave me a small smile, polite but sharp at the edges, like she was filing the scene away to think about later. When the door closed behind me, my chest felt tight. I didn't want to be a secret. I didn't want to be explained away as nothing more than a neighbor. The next evening, she came by with the notebook again. No words at first. Just placed it on my counter, her hand brushing mine like before. I didn't mean for you to feel out of place, she said quietly, eyes on the floor. I wanted to tell her I didn't. But I did. We stood there, close, the silence pressing in. My breath caught when she looked up, eyes holding mine just a second too long. Her lips parted, just slightly, and then she stepped back. Good night, she whispered, already moving toward the door. I stayed frozen, The almost of it lingering longer than any touch.it happened on a Sunday evening, when the neighborhood was still. The kind of quiet where you could hear someone's footsteps before you saw them. I was walking back from the corner store, bag swinging loosely at my side, when she was there on the curb, sitting alone. Her hands were folded in her lap, a light sweater pulled tight against the cool air. She didn't wave me over, just tilted her head slightly, enough that it felt like an invitation. I sat down. The concrete was cold beneath me. We watched a pair of kids on bikes ride past, their laughter trailing until it disappeared. "You're out late," I said. "So are you," she murmured, echoing the night at her door. A faint smile, then silence. Her fingers brushed against her knee, restless. I noticed it, then noticed she noticed me noticing. She exhaled. "My daughter asked about you," she said finally. The words landed heavier than she meant them to. "What did you tell her?" I tried to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me. "That you're a neighbor." A pause. "That you're kind?" I nodded slowly, staring at the ground. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't hide. "It's true," she added, her voice quieter now. "But I shouldn't let you stay here like this." "Like what?" She looked at me then. Direct. Not cruel, but firm. "Like someone waiting." I didn't answer. My throat worked, but nothing came. Her gaze softened. "You're too young to be waiting for someone like me." The sentence hung there, trembling. I wanted to laugh it off, but my hand gripped the plastic bag too tightly, knuckles whitening. "You think I don't know that?" I said, too sharp. Her eyes widened slightly at my tone. Then she lowered her gaze, nodding once. Neither of us moved. The street lamp above flickered, shadows shifting. She spoke again, softer. "I don't want to hurt you." I swallowed hard. My mouth opened, closed. Finally. "Maybe I'd rather be hurt by you than not at all." The silence after that felt different. Like a door half opened. She turned her head toward me slowly, as though bracing for something. The lines of her face looked sharper in the streetlight, but her eyes looked young, almost searching. "I shouldn't be sitting here with you," she whispered. But she didn't move. And neither did I. The air thickened, the distance between us charged. I thought of leaning closer. Thought of what it would mean if she let me. Her lips parted, like she was about to say something. Instead, she pressed them together, glanced down at her hands. When she looked back up, her voice barely carried. "What is it you really want from me?" The question cut through the night, and for the first time, I had no answer. The night after she asked me what I wanted, I couldn't sleep. I replayed her voice in my head, the way it trembled even as she tried to hold steady. It didn't feel like rejection, not exactly. More like she'd opened a door halfway and then shut it fast, afraid of what was inside. I told myself I'd go over the next day. Knock on her door. Say something, anything, that would make her know I wasn't just waiting blindly. But when I stepped out onto my porch, her car was already gone. For 3 days, the house next door stayed dark in the evenings. No kitchen light glowing late. No faint hum of the radio she sometimes left on. It was like she'd folded herself out of the neighborhood. I tried not to notice. I stayed longer at work, walked slower coming home. My phone buzzed once, her number, but when I opened it, the screen showed a message erased before it reached me. Just typing, stopped. By the 4th night I caved. I walked to her front steps. Stood there with my hand half raised, ready to knock. Through the glass of her front window, I saw her sitting at the table. A man's jacket draped over the back of a chair across from her. Not her ex-husband's. I knew enough to recognize that. Someone new, or maybe someone old. I froze. The air felt thick, like walking into water. I turned back before she saw me. The next morning, she was outside clipping roses by her porch. When she noticed me, her smile was polite, practiced, too quick. "You've been busy," she said, as though nothing had shifted. "Yeah," I answered. I shoved my hands in my pockets, my voice flatter than I wanted. For a moment, she hesitated, like she was going to say something else. But she only pressed her lips together, carried the roses inside, and closed the door behind her. The distance between our houses felt wider than the street itself. I tried writing to her that night. Typed out words I didn't even know I had in me. You don't have to explain. I just want to know if I should stop waiting. I stared at it, thumb hovering. My chest ached not with heartbreak, but with something duller. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. I locked the phone. Slid it face down on the table. The message stayed unsent. Her window stayed dark. And I stayed where I was, wondering if she'd ever noticed the silence I left. It was raining the night it finally happened. A steady, thin kind of rain, the kind that softened everything, made the world feel smaller. I was sitting on my porch, hoodie pulled over my head, watching water slide down the street, when her front door creaked open. She stepped out with an umbrella, stopped when she saw me. For a moment, she looked like she might turn back inside. But then she crossed the wet lawn instead, slow and deliberate, until she was standing at the bottom of my steps. You'll catch a cold, she said softly, the umbrella tilting just enough to shield me too. I'll be fine, I muttered. My voice sounded rougher than I meant. She studied me for a long beat. You haven't been by. I almost laughed at that. Didn't seem like I should. Her eyes flicked down, then back up. There was something tired in them, something unguarded. That wasn't what I wanted. The rain filled the silence between us, steady and unrelenting. I shifted on the step, fingers gripping the edge of the wood. Then what do you want? She didn't answer right away. Just stood there, umbrella trembling slightly in her hand. Finally, she set it down beside her, letting the rain hit her shoulders. I want. She stopped, swallowed, tried again. I want to stop pretending that I don't look forward to hearing you knock. Or that I don't notice when you're gone. Her voice was low, uneven. But I'm scared of what it makes me. What it makes you. The words stung in their honesty. I felt my chest tighten, not with anger but with something sharper, relief mixed with ache. You think I haven't thought about that? I asked. My voice cracked, unsteady. Every day, I wonder if this is just me imagining more than there is. If you'll wake up one morning and decide I was just a distraction. Her eyes closed briefly, as if the word itself pained her. When she opened them, there was no guard left. You're not a distraction. We stood there in the rain, close but not touching. I wanted to reach for her, to bridge the space that had kept us circling each other for weeks. But I stayed still, waiting, because maybe that was the only way to mean it. She stepped closer, just enough for her hand to brush mine. Not holding, not claiming, just contact. Small, human, trembling. I don't know where this goes, she whispered. Neither do I said. Her hand stayed against mine. The rain softened around us, or maybe I just stopped hearing it. We didn't kiss. We didn't promise anything. She just looked at me, wet hair clinging to her face, and said the quietest word I'd been waiting for. Okay. Life didn't change all at once. There was no lightning bolt, no sudden rewriting of who we were. It was smaller than that. Softer. Weeks passed. She still clipped roses on Sundays. I still drank black coffee at 8:47 a.m. sharp before heading to work. But somewhere in the in-between, the distance that had always felt like a wall began to feel like a door left unlocked. Sometimes I'd find myself on her porch, knocking without thinking. Sometimes she'd appear at mine, carrying 2 mugs of tea instead of one. We didn't talk about what we were. We didn't need to. One evening I sat with her on the same bench where she once told me I was. Waiting. This time, she didn't say it. She just leaned slightly, her shoulder brushing mine, as though she knew I was already where I wanted to be. Too quiet tonight, she murmured. I smiled at that. Not really. She tilted her head, pretending not to understand, but her lips curved anyway. Her daughter came by less often, busy with school, and when she did, I was still the neighbor. Nothing more, nothing less. That was fine. There was no rush to redefine us for anyone else. We had our own language anyway, unfinished texts, half-laughed jokes, glances that filled the space words couldn't. A thermos set on my porch one morning meant she'd thought of me before work. A folded napkin left on her counter meant she knew I'd stayed longer than planned. Little things, but they built into something steady. One rainy evening, I caught myself asking, almost out of habit, "What do you want from me?" She was pouring tea, her hands steady, her voice even. "Nothing. I just like when you're here." That was enough. More than enough. I realized I didn't need the grand gestures or declarations I once thought love was supposed to look like. It wasn't a confession blurted out at midnight, or a kiss stolen under a street lamp. It was her refilling my mug before I could ask. It was me noticing when she hummed without meaning to, and her not stopping even when she knew I heard. One night, much later, we sat together again on her porch. The same steady rain, the same quiet hum between us. I glanced at her, and she met my eyes without hesitation this time. "Okay?" I asked, half smiling. She breathed out, slow, steady. "Okay." And that was it. Nothing dramatic. Just peace. A kind of peace that felt earned. Not perfect, not finished. But ours. And I knew, whether it lasted a season, a year, or a lifetime, I wouldn't trade the quiet for anything louder. Because in the pauses, in the small touches, in the unsaid things, she was there. And I was, too.